Imagine a world where humans never discovered coal, where oil was just a curiosity buried underground, where natural gas never fueled a single flame. No smog, no oil spills, no climate change. From the moment the first machines turned, they ran not on combustion, but on the wind, the water, and the sun. This isn't a distant utopia. This is a version of Earth, a version that could have existed if we had chosen a different path 2 centuries ago. Because in this alternate 2025, humanity has never burned a single fossil fuel. The skies are clear, the oceans are alive, and the course of civilization has taken a radically different shape. But before you envy this cleaner, greener world, ask yourself, what was gained and what was lost? In our reality, fossil fuels ignited the Industrial Revolution, and with it, centuries of progress and pollution. But what if they never did? What if the entire foundation of modern society had been built on renewable energy from the very beginning? No oil empires, no climate crisis. No decades-long battle to reverse environmental collapse. Instead, a world powered by hydroelectric dams, wind farms, solar panels, and advanced battery networks deployed not in the 2000s, but in the 1800s. This video is your front row seat to an alternate Earth, where the entire trajectory of human civilization pivoted toward sustainability from day one. We'll explore the reimagined industrial era, the birth of fossil-free technology, the geopolitical landscape ruled by clean energy, and a 2025 where nature and innovation coexist in harmony. But it wasn't a perfect ride. This world faced challenges, delays, and trade-offs we often overlook when dreaming of utopias. So stay tuned. Because by the end of this journey, you'll be asking yourself one haunting question. Why wasn't this our reality? To understand the world we missed, we need to go back to the very beginning of the industrial age, where humanity made a different choice. The year is 1825. In our timeline, coal is beginning to transform entire cities into soot-covered furnaces, powering factories and trains, and setting the world on a path of explosive, carbon-heavy growth. But in this alternate world, coal remains untouched beneath the earth. Humanity has either not discovered its potential or consciously rejected it. Instead, the earliest industrial engineers looked to nature itself for power. Water wheels once used for simple grain mills are refined into high-efficiency hydro turbines. Windmills already scattered across Europe are reimagined, not just as agricultural tools, but as engines of mechanical progress. The heat of the earth, geothermal energy, is explored far earlier, as inventors drill down not for oil, but for clean, renewable steam. This version of the Industrial Revolution is slower, more deliberate, and profoundly more sustainable. Innovation doesn't explode in smoke and flame. It hums, spins, and flows. The absence of fossil fuels forces early inventors to prioritize efficiency from day one. Steam engines run on sustainably harvested biomass or high-pressure steam generated through geothermal vents. Factories operate along rivers, not because it's convenient, but because flowing water is their lifeblood. Communities develop around these energy hubs, creating dense, walkable industrial villages rather than sprawling, smog-choked cities. Without cheap, abundant coal, waste is expensive. Materials are reused, recycled, or locally sourced. Entire economies evolve with conservation built into their DNA. It isn't just the energy source that changes. It's the entire philosophy of progress. And this shift has massive cultural implications. Mastering nature never becomes the dominant narrative. Instead, coexisting with it does. Art, education, and politics grow with an ecological conscience. Children are taught not only to build, but to sustain. Governments enforce energy regulation not to clean up a mess, but to prevent one. And while nations like Britain, France, and Germany still industrialize, the speed and scale are very different. Power is more decentralized. The first electric grids begin as isolated systems driven by local hydro plants. International trade routes develop cautiously, limited by the range of clean-powered ships and locomotives. The result? A world that's more regional, but far more resilient. And perhaps, most shockingly, this cleaner path doesn't mean humanity falls behind. In fact, many technologies we only began to develop in the late 20th century, solar cells, electric motors, battery storage, arrive much earlier here, out of necessity. When oil isn't an option, innovation finds a different way forward. This is a civilization shaped not by what it could burn, but by what it could preserve. But the revolution doesn't stop at factory walls. Let's step outside and see how a fossil-free foundation reshaped transportation, expansion, and the layout of the entire world. In a world where fossil fuels never enter the equation, the transportation revolution looks nothing like what we know. There are no highways choked with gasoline-powered cars, no diesel freighters slicing through oceans, and no jetliners streaking across the sky on kerosene fumes. Instead, the evolution of movement follows a radically different path, one rooted in renewable ingenuity. Let's start on land. Without oil to inspire the internal combustion engine, the automobile never develops in the same form. Instead of Henry Ford's gas-guzzling Model T, early innovators focus on electric propulsion. By the mid-1800s, electric streetcars and trams dominate urban centers, powered by city-managed hydro or wind-electric grids. Instead of sprawling suburbs built around cars, cities develop upward and inward, compact, walkable, and seamlessly integrated with electric transit systems. Rail becomes king, not just for people, but for freight. Massive electric trains powered by overhead wires connected to wind. Hydro, or early solar stations, form the arteries of national logistics. Speed and scale increase with each decade as maglev-style trains emerge, not in the 2000s, but perhaps as early as the 1950s in this world, due to accelerated focus on clean electromagnetism. Now imagine the seas. Without coal-fired steamships or oil-based supertankers, the maritime world returns to and reinvents the sail. But this isn't your grandfather's wooden brigantine. These are sleek, solar-assisted cargo vessels designed to capture both wind and sun. Early hydrogen fuel cells begin powering auxiliary systems. By the 1900s, hybrid vessels glide across oceans with silent efficiency, trading speed for sustainability. Travel isn't necessarily slower, it's smarter. With no cheap gasoline to burn, every route is calculated for energy efficiency. Naval architecture evolves rapidly to meet the energy constraints, and marine engineers become national heroes for their ability to cross oceans with the least waste. And then there's the sky. Aviation doesn't take off as fast. Without jet fuel, humanity hits a wall. But out of that wall comes innovation. Dirigibles, massive airships powered by electric rotors and solar skin, become the first form of air travel. They're not fast, but they're clean. These floating leviathans serve as airborne cruise liners and even mobile communications hubs. Eventually, electric flight becomes possible, not in the 21st century, but maybe by the 1940s here, because all scientific minds have always been focused on one mission: clean lift. Expansion happens, but differently. Colonization and empire building are constrained, not by ambition, but by energy. Without fossil fuels to rapidly mobilize armies and armadas, military and economic imperialism progress more slowly. Instead, influence spreads through technology, culture, and trade of intellectual resources. Globalization still unfolds, but it's measured and far less destructive. Cultural exchange is deep and deliberate, not shallow and extractive. Cities rise not for their proximity to oil fields or shipping lanes, but for their renewable advantages. River valleys, coastal winds, geothermal hotspots, and sun-soaked deserts. By 2025 in this world, we see interconnected megacities, powered by underground geothermal cores, mountain-spanning wind farms, and solar belt trading routes that favor desert nations with abundant sunlight. Transportation is no longer the planet's burden, it's its triumph. The design of human civilization has never prioritized movement for movement's sake. Every journey must be justified by the energy it costs, and as a result, travel becomes sacred. Every trip is more intentional. Every destination matters. But as the wheels, sails, and propellers of this clean world turn, a new question emerges. Who holds the power now? Let's step into the halls of geopolitics, where oil-rich empires never rise. And green energy shapes who rules the world. In our world, the discovery of oil redefined global power. Nations rich in fossil fuels rose to dominate the 20th and 21st centuries, building empires on black gold. But in this alternate timeline, where fossil fuels are never harnessed, power consolidates along a different axis, not around what's buried, but around what's renewable. Let's start with the most striking shift: the Middle East. Without oil as a geopolitical asset, the region's historical trajectory is radically altered. Instead of desert kingdoms becoming energy giants, they evolve in other directions. Some become leaders in solar research, investing in sun harvesting technologies centuries ahead of schedule. Others lean into education, trade, or water innovation. Political instability fueled by oil, wealth, and foreign interference never materializes on the same scale. Meanwhile, nations rich in natural energy flows rise to global prominence. The vast hydro potential of Scandinavia, the windswept plains of Patagonia, the sun-drenched deserts of North Africa and Australia all become critical global players. But unlike oil states, these renewable superpowers aren't guarded by militarized borders or monopolized pipelines. Instead, energy cooperation becomes the default. By the early 1900s, a global green consortium forms an international alliance of clean energy-producing nations. Its goal: to maintain an equitable distribution of energy technologies and prevent hoarding of intellectual property. It's the opposite of what OPEC became, more cooperative than cartel-like. And without the constant competition for limited, flammable resources, global wars over energy never erupt. Think about World War I without oil-fueled tanks. World War II without petroleum-powered air fleets. Entire battle strategies in this world evolve around electricity, not combustion. Conflicts still happen, but they're less about controlling underground wealth and more about ideology, access to innovation, or territorial disputes over water, sun, and wind rights. The United States, without Texas crude or the dominance of the automobile industry, becomes a different kind of superpower. Its industrial base is still strong, thanks to vast rivers, geothermal sites, and a culture of mechanical innovation. But its empire is based on renewable engineering and high-efficiency manufacturing. Without big oil lobbying, American politics are less gridlocked by energy interests and more attuned to environmental stewardship. China, abundant in solar potential and mountainous hydro zones, becomes an early innovator in microgrid development. Its Belt and Road Initiative in this timeline isn't about building ports for fossil trade. It's about wiring the world with clean energy corridors. And Africa, often treated as an extraction zone in our timeline, emerges as a central force in this world. The Congo's rivers, the Sahara's sun, and East Africa's geothermal fields make the continent not just an energy exporter, but a political leader in global climate regulation and sustainable infrastructure. This redistribution of power alters everything, from the design of trade routes to the architecture of diplomacy. Instead of nations leveraging energy scarcity, they compete to offer the most efficient, cleanest, and most scalable solutions. And with no oil money funding climate denial, the scientific community holds greater influence in global governance. International law includes environmental impact clauses by the mid-1900s. Diplomacy is shaped not by petro-interests, but by ecological balance. Think Kyoto Protocols in the 1920s, Paris Agreements in the 1940s, By 2025, geopolitics in this world isn't built on who drills the deepest. It's about who shines the brightest, literally. But even with cleaner politics and rebalanced power, what does life look like in this version of Earth? Let's explore the streets, homes, and innovations of a 2025 shaped entirely by renewable technology. Welcome to 2025, on a planet that never burned a drop of oil. Step outside in this world, and the air feels different, cleaner, crisp. The skies? A permanent blue canvas. Asthma, lung cancer, and respiratory diseases, once rampant in our fossil-fueled world, are rare medical curiosities here. And that's just the beginning. The absence of fossil fuels didn't just slow environmental decay, it rewrote the destiny of technology itself. Let's begin with energy. Without oil, gas, or coal. The race to perfect battery storage began in the 1800s. The world needed a way to store intermittent solar, wind, and hydro, and it found one. By the early 1900s, deep-cycle chemical batteries become household fixtures. By the 1950s, solid-state batteries power everything from homes to airships. And by 2025, every village, home, and wearable device is powered by ultra-efficient graphene or silicon air cells. Some no thicker than a sheet of paper. Instead of focusing R&D on extracting fuel from the earth, every scientific mind of the past 2 centuries was locked on how to harvest nature's flow. This obsession leads to early breakthroughs in solar technology. By the mid-20th century, solar panels already coat rooftops, bridges, and even clothing. In this 2025, solar efficiency regularly hits 60%, more than double our current world's best. Wind turbines don't just spin on hills, they're woven into city skylines. Rooftop microturbines hum silently atop every structure, capturing even the lightest breeze. Entire city blocks are designed to channel wind like a natural amplifier, turning architecture into infrastructure. Geothermal fields light up the night, from Iceland to Indonesia. Entire schools, hospitals, and factories sit atop deep-drilled wells, drawing steam from Earth's mantle like sipping tea from a kettle. And in desert regions, massive solar towers reflect sunlight from mirrors across the sands, generating gigawatts without burning a single gram of carbon. Now, let's look at climate. With no carbon emissions for over 200 years, Earth's CO levels have remained steady near pre-industrial norms. The polar ice caps are intact, sea levels. Stable coral reefs thrive, fisheries overflow, and forests once destined for collapse remain lush, teeming with life. In fact, the planet's biodiversity is stronger here. Because there was never a 6th mass extinction triggered by human combustion. Weather systems in this world are wild but predictable. There are no megadroughts sparked by warming oceans. No hurricane clusters fed by superheated surface temperatures. Wildfires exist, but they're natural, cyclical, and manageable. And the absence of fossil fuels transformed agriculture. Instead of monocrop farms built around oil-powered machinery and fertilizer, this world developed solar automated vertical farms and hydroponic systems long before our timeline. Food is grown with precision, not pollution. Farming is clean, data-driven, and carbon-neutral by design. And without petrochemicals, the plastic age unfolds differently. Instead of polymers born in oil labs, this society develops algae-based bioplastics and mushroom-derived packaging. Materials degrade naturally. Landfills are minimal. The oceans remain clear. But the most striking difference, humanity's relationship with Earth itself. Here, nature was never framed as a resource to be consumed, but as a partner to be understood. That shift in mindset becomes the hidden engine of technological growth. Even digital technology evolves differently. Energy-hungry data centers never become climate hazards. By the 2000s, solar and wind-powered computing clusters dominate global information exchange. In fact, green computing is the primary standard. Every microchip, every server, every blockchain runs on clean, distributed power. In this world, science fiction feels different too. Utopias aren't fantasies, they're achievable realities. Not because humanity was perfect, but because it started clean and never stopped. But how does this green foundation affect you? What's daily life like in this version of 2025? Let's zoom in and explore a civilization where sustainability isn't just a goal, it's the default setting of existence. In this alternate 2025, you wake up in a home that doesn't rely on a central power grid. Your walls are embedded with translucent solar sheets. Your floor stores kinetic energy from your footsteps. Your appliances hum to life using energy you didn't burn to get. This isn't luxury, it's the norm. A fossil-free foundation didn't just reshape our machines, it rewired our values. From the ground up, cities were built around energy intelligence. Skyscrapers breathe and regulate their own temperatures using passive airflow. Streets are shaded by solar panel canopies that double as charging stations. Noise pollution is minimal. No gas engines, no combustion rumble. Instead, the soft hum of electric transit blends with the natural world. Commuting is a whole different concept. Trains, trams, and hyper-efficient shared electric pods make car ownership a rare choice. People walk, bike, or ride clean transport woven into urban infrastructure. Urban sprawl, as we know it, never happened. Instead of highways, there are greenways. Instead of parking lots, there are vertical forests. And all of this affects how people live and think. This 2025 isn't obsessed with speed or convenience for its own sake. It's designed for resilience, sustainability, and quality of life. Consumerism also evolved. Without oil-based manufacturing, the culture of cheap, fast, disposable never took root. Items are designed to last, to be repaired, to be reabsorbed into circular economies. Fast fashion never exploded. Plastic packaging never became king. You buy less, but better, and everything you own carries a story of mindful creation. In schools, sustainability isn't a subject, it's a lens. Children are taught systems thinking, resource balance, and regenerative design from a young age. By 10, they understand how energy is harvested, how waste becomes input, and how every action ripples through an ecosystem. The workforce is different too. Entire industries were never born. There are no oil rigs, no gas stations, no fossil fuel lobbying giants. Instead, millions work in renewable engineering, sustainable agriculture, circular manufacturing, and decentralized infrastructure management. Green-collar jobs dominate every sector. From AI systems that optimize grid flow to algae farmers cultivating next-gen materials. Even the financial world changed course. Economies aren't indexed on consumption growth alone, but on environmental indicators, well-being metrics, and long-term stability. Carbon credits aren't emergency tools, they're baked into the very fabric of trade and taxation. Corporations are legally obligated to maintain ecological balance, not just shareholder profits. Religion, art, and culture reflect this shift too. New spiritual movements emerge, worshiping not fire and brimstone, but harmony and regeneration. Music festivals are powered by pedal bikes. Museums are cooled by geothermal. Cities host seasonal rituals marking energy transitions. Solstice festivals tied not just to light, but to light harvesting. And in homes around the world, people eat differently. Meat consumption is minimal, not from coercion, but because plant-based farming reached gourmet levels centuries earlier. Food miles are a concept of the past. Your meals grow vertically in your neighborhood, not halfway across the globe. Mental health trends also look different. Without the stressors of polluted environments and with nature embedded in daily life, depression and anxiety rates are lower. Access to green spaces is seen as a public right, not a luxury. Perhaps the most profound shift, identity. In this 2025, being human means being a caretaker, not a consumer. Technology isn't about domination, it's about integration. This is a civilization where energy flows cleanly, economies revolve mindfully, And society moves with the rhythm of the earth, not against it. But even paradise has its imperfections. What were the trade-offs, sacrifices, and hidden costs of rejecting fossil fuels entirely? Let's pull back the curtain on the challenges that shaped this cleaner world. Let's be clear. This world may be cleaner, but it's not perfect. Utopias rarely are. Humanity's choice to avoid fossil fuels entirely didn't come without steep costs. Some immediate, some delayed, and some still unfolding even in this greener 2025. The first and most obvious: speed. The fossil-fueled industrial revolution in our world ignited a rapid explosion in productivity. Coal-powered factories, oil-driven transport, and gas-fueled expansion created entire industries in decades. In this timeline, progress was slower, not because humans were less intelligent, but because renewable tech required more time to develop, test, and scale under harder constraints. In the 1800s and early 1900s, energy was precious and hard-won. Rivers froze in winter. Winds died in summer. Solar cells weren't yet refined. Societies had to learn patience, something our world never really mastered. Some early civilizations plateaued temporarily due to limited energy availability, triggering short-term stagnation, even famine. Second, energy inequality became a global issue, not because of fossil fuel hoarding, but due to geographic limitations. Nations without consistent sunlight, strong rivers, or geothermal vents had to import not just energy, but energy infrastructure. This created early imbalances in development. Some remote areas remained underpowered for decades, until microgrid technology matured. And in a world so reliant on weather-dependent power, resilience was hard-earned. Blackouts weren't just technical problems. They were existential threats. Major world events were occasionally disrupted by multi-day power shortages. Entire regions had to develop advanced storage and forecasting systems just to keep society running smoothly. Then there's materials. Without oil, we lost access to a vast array of synthetic chemicals and industrial plastics. The conveniences of single-use packaging, lightweight construction, and polymer-based electronics took decades longer to achieve, if at all. Medicine, aerospace, computing all hit bottlenecks without the rapid scalability that petrochemicals allowed. As a result, some industries faced decades-long delays. Aviation, for instance, remained mostly grounded or limited to short-range airships and experimental gliders, until safe electric or hydrogen propulsion matured. Global shipping was slow, efficient, and sustainable, but still slower. Economic pain was also real. Without fossil-fueled economies to inflate GDP and jobs through extraction and combustion, early economic models had to redefine growth entirely. There were recessions, collapses, even energy riots in certain decades when renewable systems failed or political sabotage crippled grids. Society learned, sometimes the hard way, that sustainability doesn't mean invulnerability. Politically, ideological friction arose between green traditionalists who wanted to maintain strict ecological limits, and eco-progressives pushing for high-efficiency tech and denser energy solutions like nuclear or fusion. Without fossil fuels to rally against, environmental politics became more nuanced and sometimes more divisive. And perhaps most hauntingly, some problems still exist. Climate instability isn't gone. Forest fires still rage. Biodiversity still faces pressure from human sprawl and population growth. Not because we burned carbon, but because we are still learning how to live well without overreaching. Even in this world, human nature wasn't instantly purified by solar panels. There are green oligarchs. There are renewable monopolies. There are black markets for illegally mined rare earth elements needed for advanced tech. Sustainability changed the rules, but not always the players. And finally, there's the burden of hindsight. In this world, no one can blame the weather on oil spills or carbon bombs. Every environmental misstep is our fault entirely. This forces deeper accountability, but also a greater psychological weight. No convenient villain. No, if only we had gone green sooner. They were green from the beginning, and the pressure to get it right every step of the way is enormous. So now, having seen both the beauty and the burden of this alternate timeline, how does it compare to the one you're living in right now? Let's step into the final section. A direct comparison between our 2025 and the one that might have been. Now that we've walked through a 2025 built entirely without fossil fuels, it's time to face the uncomfortable question. What did we actually choose? Our real 2025 is a world still reeling from the consequences of burning coal, oil, and gas for 2 centuries straight. Despite advances in solar panels, wind farms, and EVs, we are by most estimates decades too late to prevent irreversible climate damage. We live with rising seas, supercharged storms, and air that shortens lifespans in the world's most polluted cities. In this alternate world, glaciers never receded. In ours, we debate whether they'll ever stop. Their coral reefs thrive, bleach year after year as oceans absorb the consequences of our energy addiction. Their skies are clear, ours still filled with carbon, methane, and microplastics that settle into our bodies and our bloodstreams. The contrast is brutal, but perhaps even more haunting is the cultural difference. In their 2025, the idea of an oil lobby sounds dystopian. Climate denial is absurd. Mass extinction due to human activity is a dark fiction. Meanwhile, our timeline has treated these things as background noise for generations. They never built their world on combustion. We not only built on it, we worshipped it. We waged wars over it. We subsidized it. We made it the center of our global economy, knowing the damage it would cause. And we didn't stop when we knew better. We're still burning. In that alternate world, governments were forced from the beginning to think in centuries. Their energy systems were slower to start, but built to last. Ours were quick, dirty, and, by design, unsustainable. Their problems are ones of scale, equity, and adaptation. Ours are problems of survival. But here's the twist. The clean Earth isn't perfect. It's not a fantasy. It has problems, real ones. Energy gaps, uneven development, natural disasters, political strife. But their baseline condition, the canvas they paint civilization on, is livable, stable, and reversible. Ours is eroding faster than we can fix it. So now, ask yourself this. If you could trade places, would you? Would you accept a slightly slower start, fewer luxuries, and more patience? For a world where the air doesn't kill, the climate doesn't collapse, and progress doesn't mean poisoning the planet. Would you give up the gasoline engine for a city that hums quietly? Would you give up convenience for permanence? Because that's what this contrast ultimately reveals. Not just 2 different timelines, but 2 different priorities. And the most painful realization of all. This cleaner Earth wasn't impossible. It was just a choice we didn't make. But choices can still be made. Which brings us to one final question. What can we learn from this timeline? And how do we move closer to it from where we are right now? The world you've just seen, a 2025 without fossil fuels, wasn't built on fantasy. Every innovation, every policy, every cultural shift was within reach. We had the rivers, we had the sun, we had the wind. What we lacked was the will. This wasn't a failure of technology, it was a failure of vision. And now, with rising temperatures, poisoned air, and a ticking climate clock, we're forced to ask, can we still shift timelines? Can we still build what they built? The answer isn't simple. We can't erase the centuries of combustion, but we can accelerate the transition that should have started long ago. We can demand energy systems that don't destroy what they power. We can vote for leadership that sees further than the next election cycle. We can support innovation that values sustainability over short-term profit. And more than anything, we can imagine better. Because imagining better is the first step toward building better. The more we visualize worlds like this, cleaner, smarter, slower, stronger. The harder it becomes to tolerate the one we're stuck in. This alternate 2025 may not be ours. But every decision we make today pushes us one step closer to a version of Earth we can still be proud of. The choice is no longer theoretical. It's real. It's urgent, and it's up to us. If this vision made you reflect, question, or even dream, don't let it fade. Like this video to show support for the ideas that matter. Subscribe if you believe alternative futures deserve a spotlight. Comment below. Would you trade our present for this cleaner 2025? What do you think we should do differently from now on? And remember, the future isn't written in oil. It's written in choice.